The hatred Iran's leaders profess for Israel is not a modern political stance. It is an ancient spiritual inheritance. It didn't begin with the Ayatollahs or even in the 20th century. The Bible reveals its true origin in the heart of one man, a descendant of Israel's most ancient enemy, who made a deal with a king to commit a genocide. This is the story of that ancient hatred. Our story begins not in Tehran, but in the heart of the ancient Persian Empire, in the court of King Xerxes. It is here we meet the villain of this story, a high official named Haman. The Bible gives us a crucial detail about his identity, calling him Haman the Agagite. This is not just a title, it is a bloodline. It means Haman was a descendant of Agag, the king of the Amalekites. To understand this hatred, you must understand the Amalekites. Their evil was so profound that God himself placed them under a unique and permanent judgment. They were the first tribe to attack the fledgling nation of Israel after they escaped from Egypt. As Deuteronomy chapter 25 recounts, they showed no fear of God, preying on the weak and the vulnerable, attacking all who were lagging behind when you were faint and weary. This predatory attack on God's newly redeemed people was seen as a direct assault on God himself. Because of this, God gave Israel's first king, Saul, a direct and uncompromising command, recorded in 1 Samuel 15. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them. But King Saul disobeyed. He destroyed the weak, but kept the best of the sheep and oxen, and he spared the life of their king, Agag. When the prophet Samuel confronted him, he made excuses. But Samuel declared God's verdict with the immortal words, "To obey is better than sacrifice." Because Saul had rejected the word of the Lord rejected him as king. Though Samuel himself then executed King Agag, the damage was done. Saul's disobedience allowed the royal bloodline of Israel's most ancient enemy to survive. Centuries passed, and from that surviving lineage, a man named Haman emerges, rising to power in the very empire where many Jews now lived. Haman's hatred wasn't just personal pride, it was an ancient, generational assignment to finish the war his ancestor had lost. Haman's ancient hatred festered in the heart of the Persian court, waiting for a spark. That spark came from Mordecai. As Haman paraded through the city, all the royal officials would bow, but Mordecai, a Jew serving at the king's gate, would not. For a man with Haman's pride and Amalekite blood, this was an intolerable act of defiance. His rage demanded more than one man's life. He scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, he began to plot the annihilation of Mordecai's entire people. He approached King Xerxes with cold political calculation, slandering the Jews, describing them as a scattered and subversive people whose laws were different from all others, subtly painting them as a threat to the stability of the Persian Empire. To seal his deal, Haman made the king an offer that appealed directly to his greed. He promised to pay a staggering
10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury, a fortune of almost unimaginable size, to compensate the kingdom for this action. He wasn't just requesting a genocide, he was financing it. Convinced by the lies and enticed by the silver, the king carelessly handed his royal signet ring to Haman. This was the ultimate symbol of delegated power. A decree sealed with this ring became part of the law of the Medes and Persians, a legal principle designed to show the absolute authority of the king's word. Such a law was permanent and irrevocable. It could not be changed or repealed, not even by the king himself. Haman used this power to draft his genocidal decree. It was sealed, and couriers were dispatched to all the 127 provinces. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, all Jews, young and old, women and children, were to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. The ancient hatred now had the full, unstoppable force of imperial law. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Book of Esther describes it with chilling clarity. In every province where the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Mordecai himself tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, crying with a loud and bitter cry. It was a nation sentenced to death with no legal hope of appeal.
With the law of annihilation set in stone, it seemed that no earthly power could save the Jewish people. And this is where the Book of Esther reveals its unique genius. It's famous among theologians for one startling fact. The name of God is not explicitly mentioned a single time. But this isn't an omission, it is the entire point. The story is a masterclass in divine providence, showing God's hand moving silently and powerfully in the background, arranging events like pieces on a cosmic chessboard when his people are far from their land and temple. Think of the coincidences that have led to this moment. An orphan girl just happens to be chosen as queen of the world's most powerful empire. Her uncle, Mordecai, just happens to overhear an assassination plot, saving the king's life and earning a note in the royal records. These are the fingerprints of an unseen God, working his will not through parted seas or fire from heaven, but through the courage and choices of faithful people in a pagan world. It was Mordecai who sent word to Esther of the plot. But his plea was rooted in this deep faith. When he challenged her with the famous words, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" it was a statement of belief in a God who strategically places his people for his purposes. His warning that relief and deliverance will arise from another place was an expression of his unwavering trust that this unseen God would save his people, whether through her or some other means. In that moment, Esther understood. Her life wasn't a series of random events. It was an assignment. She embraced her destiny, and her call for the Jews to fast with her was a profound act of spiritual warfare, an appeal to the God whose name didn't need to be spoken to be invoked. She declared, "I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Having committed to her dangerous plan, Esther approached the king. Her life hung in the balance, but the unseen God was with her.
The king extended his golden scepter, sparing her life and promising her anything she desired. With incredible wisdom, she didn't reveal her true request. Instead, she invited King Xerxes and Haman to a private banquet, building the suspense. Haman left that first banquet filled with pride, but his joy turned to rage when he again saw Mordecai refusing to bow. He went home and, on the advice of his wife, built a gallows 75 feet high, intending to ask the king the very next morning to have Mordecai hanged upon it. His arrogance had sealed his own fate. That very night, the gears of divine providence began to turn. The king could not sleep. He commanded that the royal chronicles be read to him, and the attendant just happened to read the account of how Mordecai had saved the king from an assassination plot, an act for which he was never rewarded. The next morning, in a moment of profound humiliation, Haman was forced to lead his mortal enemy through the city streets in a parade of honor. The reversal had begun. The final act took place at the second banquet. The king, his curiosity at its peak, again asked Esther for her request. It was then she made her plea. "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, let my life be spared, this is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king was stunned. "Who is he?" he demanded. "Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing?" And Esther delivered her powerful accusation. "An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman." Terror seized Haman. The king, erupting in a rage, stormed out into the palace garden. Seeing his doom, Haman fell on Esther's couch to beg for his life. At that exact moment, the king returned and, misinterpreting the scene, roared, "Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?" As the words left his mouth, his guards covered Haman's face. Then one of the king's attendants pointed out the gallows Haman had prepared for Mordecai. The king's command was swift and final. Hang him on it.
Haman, the enemy, was dead, hanged on his own gallows. But his evil decree remained the law of the land. So Queen Esther pleaded with the king again. Bound by his own law, the king devised a brilliant solution. He gave his royal signet ring to Mordecai and granted him the authority to write a new counter-decree. This new law, rushed to all 127 provinces, gave the Jews the explicit legal right to assemble and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, the very day Haman's dark lottery had chosen for their destruction, the Jewish people assembled. A great fear of them had fallen upon the surrounding peoples, and many officials of the empire, knowing Mordecai was now second in command, actively helped the Jews. They were victorious over those who had sought to destroy them. And in a profound display of righteousness, though they had the legal right to take the property of their enemies, the Bible notes 3 separate times that they did not lay a hand on the plunder. To commemorate this incredible reversal,
Mordecai and Esther established the festival of Purim. They sent letters to all the Jews, instructing them to celebrate these days every year with feasting, joy, and giving gifts to one another and to the poor. In a final act of divine irony, the very name of their enemy's superstitious ritual was transformed into an everlasting memorial of God's salvation. And so, the story of Esther concludes. But the larger story of Persia and Israel leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. We have seen two completely opposite histories, one of a divinely appointed ally who saved God's people, and one of a demonic plotter who sought their annihilation. How can one nation hold both destinies? The answer lies in the spiritual realm. The Bible teaches that behind earthly thrones there are spiritual forces at war. The spirit that moved through the benevolent King Cyrus was one of restoration, in line with God's will. But the spirit that animated Haman, the ancient Amalekite hatred, was one of pure genocidal evil. The history of Iran and Israel is the story of a nation being influenced by these two warring spirits. The journey from ally to enemy was not a mere political shift. It was the result of a spiritual coup. This brings us to today. When we analyze the rhetoric of modern Iran, we must ask which spirit is in control. The open threats to wipe Israel off the map are the direct echo of Haman's decree, not Cyrus's. The final chapter of this lost history, according to the Bible's prophets, follows this dark path, placing Persia as a key player in the final end-times invasion of Israel. Therefore, when you see the animosity between Iran and Israel today, you should no longer ask why. You should now ask, which spirit is speaking? The Bible reveals that the journey from ally to enemy was a spiritual hijacking, and understanding that lost history is the only key to discerning the prophetic future.
This briefing is now complete. But the investigation never ends. To ensure you receive all future declassifications, be sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Like this video to signal its importance, and share it with others who are ready to look beyond the headlines. Leave your own intel in the comments below, because there is still much more to declassify.